Let's talk about one reason in which you may have a progesterone deficiency as a female. Hi, I'm Hayden, nurse practitioner and co-owner of the UIT Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I own and operate my own practice specializing in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And today I want to talk about an overlooked concept of why we might have progesterone deficiencies as females. So first, before we start the conversation, I want to talk a little bit about what is progesterone. So progesterone is a female sex hormone. It's produced from our ovaries in response to adequate corpus luteum production. Corpus luteum production is triggered by a surplus in our luteinizing hormone. Now we'll talk about kind of the pathophysiology of how this can be reduced in time. So listen to this video. So when we have sufficient progesterone, its main role is to protect the uterine lining and get it ready for implantation. So often we see if females have progesterone deficiencies, they're at increased risk for miscarriages. Let's talk about some of the symptoms associated with low progesterone, and that may be difficulties initiating and sustaining sleep, feeling a little bit more irritable than normal, and then thirdly, feeling maybe there's some fluid retention because progesterone is a known diuretic. So you're going to be diuresing or peeing off some of the extra fluid. And it's also known to regulate GABA receptors in our brain, which helps keep us more calm, serene, and peaceful. So this is why if we have a deficiency in progesterone, we might be having those sleep issues or even maybe feeling a little bit more on edge or not ourselves calm, nice as we normally are. And the example I love to provide for women is think about your menstrual period. This is a time in which our progesterone is at its lowest. So you often hear people maybe not so nicely using the word PMS, like, oh, are you on your period? Because you're acting a little bit more agitated. And this is often because of a progesterone deficiency. So I can absolutely attest for myself that I may not be as kind or understanding as I would be maybe in my mid-luteal phase when my progesterone is at a higher value. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about one reason in which we could have a progesterone deficiency, and that is actually if our thyroid stinks. That is my professional word right there, is that our thyroid can stink. So many times when patients present to their primary care provider, for example, and they have their annual labs checked, usually they'll check what's called a TSH to reflex T4. So all this saying that if the thyroid stimulating hormone or the TSH is within normal limit, it's not going to then pull the blood work to look for the free T4. Now, I don't necessarily agree with this thought process. This is more Western medicine approach. I like to provide more of a functional medicine approach, and let me explain what this means. So usually most labs will look at a TSH, and it's usually between 0.5 to 5. So technically, or if you're in this range, then it's not going to look at your active thyroid hormones. And your active thyroid hormones are what can actually bind to the thyroid receptor sites and initiate change. So for my practice, I try to optimize TSH, and I want it to be under 2, and I think a really great reference range is between 1 to 2. And this would be an optimized thyroid. So why is it that we have an elevation in our thyroid stimulating hormone? And this is often because we don't have enough active thyroid hormone, so T4, T3, and I actually look more at T3. This is our active thyroid hormone itself. So if I were to draw a picture for you, essentially our hypothalamus in our brain, it increases thyrotropin releasing hormone in response to low circulating T3 and T4. It then stimulates the anterior pituitary gland to release thyroid stimulating hormone. So think about this: low circulating thyroid hormones, higher TSH. The TSH tells our thyroid gland in our neck, little butterfly gland, to produce T4, which then converts to T3, the active thyroid hormone, like I'm saying. So if you have a TSH, let's just say, for example, of 4.2, technically you're still within normal limit, and most patients, when I draw their free T4 and their free T3, it is actually suboptimal. So this is just a feedback loop, essentially, where if you have low circulating thyroid hormone, you're going to see an increase in the thyroid stimulating hormone. So let's talk about how this relates to progesterone deficiency, so important concept. So essentially, when we have an elevation from the hypothalamus in our brain and the thyrotropin releasing hormone, it is going to increase prolactin. An increase in prolactin equals a decrease in our luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone helps prepare the corpus luteum to produce progesterone. So it's a feedback loop where if we have a sucky thyroid, for example, we're ultimately going to see a decrease in our progesterone. So many of the patients I see in my clinic, that might be the first thing that we really look to address is, are you actually perimenopausal, for example, where it's true ovarian dysregulation secondary to a declining inner age or too many birthdays? Or is it because your thyroid is not optimized and therefore it's decreasing the progesterone production? Well, my name is Hayden. I am a nurse practitioner located in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you would like a personalized consultation with me, I would be happy to order your blood work and provide a personalized consultation to see how we can address your symptoms. Hope you have a great rest of your day.